My realization that true empathy might be missing online started from two personal experiences. The first was in 2018. I posted a comment on Weibo criticizing a certain traffic celebrity, someone who gained fame mainly through popularity rather than artistic merit. At the time, there was growing backlash against the so-called traffic-only culture, and my post resonated widely, getting many shares. Not long after, a TV producer contacted me, inviting me to participate in a reality show. During the phone interview, they asked why I wrote that post. I explained my viewpoint. I cared about the quality of the work, not just the numbers. I even shared honestly about my life, how I had just graduated and was considering whether to pursue a PhD or take a public service exam. Then the producer suddenly asked, "So, are you just venting your personal frustrations by attacking celebrities?" I was stunned. In that moment, I realized the show might portray me as an internet troll, maybe even bring in experts or stars to criticize me on camera. I almost became a target of public humiliation. The second experience came about 6 months later. I posted a story about my mother's first time selling goods after being laid off, a tribute to the struggles of ordinary people. But a popular influencer reshared it with a comment that my mother's way of doing business was wrong. They claimed anyone good at selling would already be making millions, implying that people like my mother and me were just losers complaining. These two experiences made me realize something crucial. No matter how sincere and open you are, people will latch onto some irrelevant detail to attack you. In plain terms, empathy is missing. This phenomenon is, honestly, just so widespread. Someone complains about getting frostbite from working in a restaurant kitchen during winter, and the comments are full of people bragging their hands are super soft. Someone regrets marrying young and having kids early, and others boast about still being treated like a child by their parents at an older age. A cooking fail sparks comments from cyber chefs showing off their perfect dishes. I recently saw a post about a botched nose job, and the comments were filled with people proudly showing off their own noses, as if, there's always a bigger nose. Someone laments looking older than their age, and the replies are photo contests asking people to guess their age, basically just fishing for compliments. Sometimes the insensitivity is honestly infuriating. When a tragic incident happened in Shenzhen where a young woman passed away, one comment read, "Good thing I bought a garden house on a high floor. You can't run in those places, no chance to save anyone," and it was accompanied by a photo of their luxury home. This is the cruelest kind of showing off, using someone else's death to flaunt social status. It made me angry, but more than that, just helpless. We seem trapped in a massive prisoner's dilemma. Understanding each other's emotions has really become a luxury. This dilemma even shows up in reunions. For people like me, in our 30s, class reunions feel like peacock farms. At least 5 people at the table compete to show off, fishing for compliments, only to downplay it with faux modesty. Once, I joked during a financial exec's bragging about expensive seafood, which broke the tension and made people laugh. But afterward, I stopped attending reunions altogether. I once thought reunions were places for genuine connection, but now I see how deep the empathy gap is. Childhood friends who shared snacks, borrowed erasers, or made your heart flutter have turned into strangers emotionally. At the core, those who brag most loudly are often those starved for recognition elsewhere. Sadly, they rarely find it. In today's relationships, coldness is almost a virtue compared to suspicion, jealousy, disdain, and competition. From online spaces to offline gatherings, this is the norm. At root, this comes down to a well-worn problem: social atomization. Everyone is exhausted by endless competition, internal strife, and survival pressures. Most feel a scarcity of money, prospects, and stability. Under such strain, people focus solely on their own needs, with no energy left to see others. Expressing emotional needs becomes shameful, yet the desire for understanding and care remains. So these needs morph into a toxic show of dominance, bragging, one-upping, and criticism. The commenters who flaunted their wealth or intellect online were ultimately just desperate for validation. Their longing for empathy twisted into the very opposite: an inability to empathize. This atomization is no choice, it's survival. Those who live at full throttle have no time or strength for emotional bonds. It's like working a sweltering hot day in a greenhouse, or laboring in freezing cold concrete work. Anxious if the harvest will sell or wages be paid. It's no surprise such toil dulls feelings and breeds bitterness. In some rural areas, the old watchdog might be slaughtered when it ages. A harsh metaphor, but one that crosses class lines. The so-called middle class, beneath the surface, shares this same vulnerability and insecurity. This story, honestly, reflects East Asian development. My father came from the countryside, rising to city life thanks to his family's sacrifices. He worked hard for decades to buy a house for me in a smaller city. East Asia's progress is built on countless ordinary families suppressing desires amid intense competition. The tragedy is that earlier generations could climb social ladders, but younger generations face rigid ceilings and shrinking opportunities. In this oppressive, sometimes socially anxious atmosphere, the goal becomes one word: win. Not in a healthy sense of ambition, but, a pathological need to outdo others. Under posts lamenting early marriage, commenters boast about being treated like babies by their parents, implying, "My life experience beats yours," especially in love and respect. So, how do we bind these isolated atoms? Japan in the 1980s tried by crafting grand narratives to mask anxiety and internal pressure. NHK's historical dramas infused pride in the nation, glorifying historic figures. Prime ministers made pilgrimages to controversial shrines, promoting so-called international contribution theories. Books like fed nationalistic fervor. This gave a powerful sense of unity, but honestly, it deepened empathy divides. Fantasies of grandeur pushed individual emotional needs further down. Relationships became obedience and dominance struggles. So, Japan's story, well, it ended in a bubble burst with disillusionment and honestly a growing sense of loneliness. The number of singles, went up from less than 1 in 5 to nearly 2 in 5 people. It's like human nature itself was eroded, subdued, and left emotionally numb. I mean, coldness and a lack of empathy were just the mild symptoms. The more extreme ones, they showed up in the rising suicide rates and growing social isolation. Can the loneliness of a single, isolated person ever really be understood? There was this vivid example from the show. A celebrity, visiting an elderly woman who was all alone at home, snapped, "If no one is home, what about you?" The tone was so harsh, and he seemed almost proud of his stinging remark. It was honestly heartbreaking to see someone who'd made it so callously dismiss a lonely elder. I no longer feel anger like before. I once thought I'd never become cold or lose empathy, but after being trolled online, verbally attacked in real life, and suffering from severe depression and anxiety, only to find my illness mocked online, I realized, media group, overhead shot of solitary individual standing among bustling crowd in city, close-up on stone heart metaphor held in hand, person walking alone on empty rural road at dusk. I stock distribute equally. Only by becoming a cold atom can one avoid getting hurt. Before that fire inside me goes out completely, I made this piece. Even if it hurts, I don't want to lose empathy. I believe many readers share this hope. I still remember the producer's question 6 years ago, asking if I attacked the celebrity out of personal frustration. I tried to explain it wasn't. Sure, maybe it felt like venting, but my real point was that the artist's work was truly bad. The producer asked if I was jealous of the young star's success and fans. I froze on camera, barely able to smile bitterly. The background music playing in my mind is the 1985 classic Tomorrow Will Be Better. Back then, people across Greater China and beyond sang about all under heaven as one family. I never lived in a time when people really tried to understand each other. But I can't help but wish, if only we could go back.